Here's what's in the $1.7 trillion federal spending bill. The legislation includes $772.5 billion for non-defense discretionary programs and $858 billion in defense funding, according to a bill summary from Democratic Senator Patrick Leahy, chair of the Senate Committee on Appropriations. The sweeping package includes roughly $45 billion in emergency assistance to Ukraine and NATO allies, boosts in spending for disaster aid, college access, childcare, mental health, and food assistance, more support for the military and veterans, and additional funds for the U.S. Capitol Police, according to Leahy's summary, and one from Senator Richard Shelby of Alabama, the top Republican on the Senate Appropriations Committee. It also includes several major Medicaid provisions, including one that could disenroll up to 19 million people from the nation's health insurance program for low-income Americans. However, the bill, which runs more than 4,000 pages, left out several measures that some lawmakers had fought to include. An expansion of the child tax credit, as well as multiple other corporate and individual tax breaks, did not make it into the final bill. Neither did legislation to allow cannabis companies to bank their cash reserves, known as the Safe Banking Act, or a bill to help Afghan evacuees in the U.S. gain lawful permanent residency. Also, there was no final resolution on where the new FBI headquarters will be located. The spending bill is the product of lengthy negotiations between top congressional Democrats and Republicans. Lawmakers reached a bipartisan, bicameral framework last week following a dispute between the two parties over how much money should be spent on non-defense domestic priorities. They worked through the weekend to craft the legislation. The Senate is expected to vote first to approve the deal this week and then send it to the House for approval, before government funding runs out on December 23. The bill would keep the government operating through September, the end of the fiscal year. Congress originally passed a continuing resolution on September 30 to temporarily fund the government in fiscal year 2023, which began October 1. The spending bill would provide roughly $45 billion to help support Ukraine's efforts to defend itself against Russia's attack. About $9 billion of the funding would go to Ukraine's military to pay for a variety of things including training, weapons, logistics support, and salaries. Nearly $12 billion would be used to replenish U.S. stocks of equipment sent to Ukraine through Presidential Drawdown Authority. Also, it would provide $13 billion for economic support to the Ukrainian government. Other funds would address humanitarian and infrastructure needs, as well as support European command operations. The bill would appropriate more than $38 billion in emergency funding to help Americans in the West and Southeast, affected by recent natural disasters, including tornadoes, hurricanes, flooding, and wildfires. It would aid farmers, provide economic development assistance for communities, repair and reconstruct federal facilities, and direct money to the Federal Emergency Management Agency's Disaster Relief Fund, among other initiatives. A provision in the legislation aims at making it harder to overturn a certified presidential election, in a direct response to the January 6 attack on the U.S. Capitol. The changes would overhaul the 1887 Electoral Count Act, which then-President Donald Trump tried to use to overturn the 2020 election.